Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido and today it is our Season A1 Champions game of the PokeType League TCG, and it is the Melamela Rumbles going up against the Pastoria Hydros, and both these sides have taken down 4 of each other's decks so far this season, but they need all 3 of their decks to win here today to become our inaugural champions in the PokeType League TCG. So with that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win. Will it be the fighting decks? Will it be the water decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And going first, having flipped heads for the Pastoria Hydros, it is that Frozen Pond deck as they put the Articuno into the active spot with the Froakie on the bench. They're going up against that Battler's Spirit deck of the Melamela Rumbles who have the Cubone in the active spot with the Marchop on the bench, and they've got the Machoke and the Marowak in hand as well, plus that Professor's Research. There is a Professor's Research in hand for the Pastoria Hydros as well, but like we said, the Hydros have taken down every single deck in the Melamela Rumbles before, and they need to take down all 3. Well, they need all 3 of theirs to win. Actually, they don't even have to take down all 3 of the opposing deck, as the Hydros have pulled their second Professor's Research and Frogadier. The Rumbles just pulling their Marshadow are going to play their Professor's Research. They get the second Machoke, but they get the Marchamp as well, immediately putting that Marshadow onto the bench, and they are going to get a first energy onto the Marshadow as well, so that way if they do lose their active Pokemon, Marshadow can do 100 base damage with that Revenge, thanks to the additional 60 that it does do. And they play their second Professor's Research, do the Hydros, getting the Poliwag and the second Froakie. They immediately put the Poliwag onto the bench, and they are going to evolve that benched Froakie into the Frogadier. Now they've got the 2 Poliwhells in hand as well, which is fantastic for that Poliwag as the Articuno gets its first energy. The Rumbles have just pulled the Giovanni, and they are going to evolve that Marchop into a Machoke. They're going to evolve the Cubone into the Marowak, and this Marowak only requires 1 energy to start performing this Bone Beatdown that will be doing 40 damage to this active Articuno, who does have 100 health, so it has been taken down to 60 as it comes back to the Hydros, and they've just pulled one of their 2 Misty cards from this Frozen Pond deck. They are going to evolve the Poliwag, but if this Misty can get enough energy onto the Articuno, realistically they only need to flip at least 1 heads. It will continuously flip coins until they get a Tails. So here we go, the first coin flip, and they get a Tails straight away. This is fantastic for the Melamela Rumbles because this Articuno will not be able to get online yet because it requires 3 energy to start doing 60 damage. And the Hydros move that second Froakie into the final spot on the bench, as well as the Rumbles have just pulled a potion, and all of their Pokemon are currently at full strength as they think about getting that Marchamp onto the Machoke, but they opt against it. Now Marchamp does require 3 energy, Machoke only requires 2, as the Bone Beatdown continues onto Articuno, another 40 damage, and it's the Greninja being pulled for the Pastoria Hydros. With that Water Shuriken, it can do 20 damage to any of the opposing Pokemon. They can target the benched Pokemon with this ability. And they are going to go for that Machoke, knowing the offensive and powerful prowess that Marchamp can bring. But here it is, the third energy onto the Articuno, gets the Ice Beam, 60 damage, but if they flip their heads now, they'll get that Paralysis onto the Marowak, but they are unable to. It is a Tails. Again, the Rumbles getting the coin flip they need as they pull their second Machoke. They're still yet to get the second Marchop in hand though, as they get the second energy onto the Machoke. They choose to evolve it now into the Marchamp, having it ready in case they move it into the active spot. They think about playing the potion as well, but they use it onto the Marchamp instead, getting it back up to 150 health, and the Bone Beatdown continues to take Articuno off the board, and the Melamela Rumbles have taken 0.1 in our first ever Champions game here in the PokeType League TCG. And the Hydros opting to move that Froakie onto the active spot so they can get an energy surely onto this Greninja, who does require 2 and it currently had 0. It's now got its first one, continuing with the Water Shuriken. Again, they can target any member of the Rumbles, and they go for the Marowak. It has 20 health remaining. Now there's not much else the Hydros can do. They send it over to the Rumbles, who have now pulled their second Marchop. They've got 2 whole Marchamp lines attainable at the moment as they get that first energy onto the Marchop that they have just benched. Although they are starting to think about it. They're looking at the Marchamp. They could get a third energy. They do. They get the third energy onto the Marchamp here. they're going to retreat the Marowak. They want to take down this Froakie immediately. They don't want to wait for this Greninja to be set up, because this Marowak will not be safe from the Greninja regardless of where it is. Although they may have changed their mind, they're very back and forth. They're really thinking about how they want to approach this. They are finally going to retreat the Marowak, so the Machamp is online, and the Seismic Toss, 100 damage to take out this poor Froakie in one go. And just like that, the Rumbles have gotten 2 points, and this is the type of dominance we saw from them for the first 6 rounds this season. They lost their last 2 rounds heading into Victory Road, and they're looking to redeem that by becoming our first ever champions. The Poliwrath though now online for the Pastoria Hydros with that counter attack ability to keep in mind if it takes damage, it does 20 damage to the opposing Pokemon. But Greninja is online now. The Water Shuriken, they can target that Marowak. It only has 20 health remaining. The Hydros could get their first point with this move. And that is the option they have taken. They've taken the Marowak out of this. Now the Mist Slash only does 60 damage. Again, this Machamp has 150 health, whereas Greninja has 120 health, so it can actually outlast the Machamp here, even with the assistance of the Giovanni that is in hand. A second Marshadow pulled for the Rumbles as well, immediately going onto the bench, getting its first energy, and the Machoke is online on that bench as well. But here is the Giovanni being used by the Rumbles. They just want to maximize the damage by the looks of it onto this Greninja. 110 damage onto the Greninja, and the Rumbles are still in full control here in game 1. But it is the Misty now being pulled for the Hydros. If they can get the 3 or at least 2 coin flips onto this Poliwrath, they could retreat the Greninja, and they get their tails straight away. Once again, Misty not coming through here in game 1 of our Champions game. Poliwrath is going to get its first energy, but it is not going to be enough unless they want to retreat that Greninja to try and keep it safe. And that is exactly what they're going to do. So the Hydros with this Frozen Pond deck are trying to buy themselves just a little bit more time. Here is the Water Shuriken. They can go for the Machamp or for any of the benched Pokemon, as we keep saying. And they are thinking about how they want to approach this. They're going to go for one of the Marshadow here. And as an additional option, the Hydros are going to move the Articuno onto the bench as well. The Rumbles have just pulled an X-Speed. They've still got that Machamp in hand, who they think of putting onto the Machoke, but similar to earlier on, they're just going to get 1 energy onto the Machoke, and this Seismic Toss, 100 damage onto the Poliwrath. It does return that 20 damage with the counter attack. Now this Machamp is actually in elimination range with this Greninja, but still those Marshadows on the bench, the Machoke on the bench, the Rumbles full control in game 1. The Hydros thinking about how they may want to approach this, and they are going to go with the Water Shuriken. They've just put a second energy onto the Poliwrath. They know how this is going to end up. There is nothing else that the Hydros can do here right now. All of their Pokemon are now in elimination range of this Machamp. They send it back over to the Hydros, the Rumbles. They don't even need to put down an energy. They are just going to go for that Seismic Toss and take game 1 with so much power. The counter attack does not matter. The Hydros were only able to manage 1 point here, and the Rumbles trying to assert their dominance early here in this Champions game. And with the table reset, it is the Rumbles flipping ahead, so they will be going first in our game 2, and this time they're going to be using that full combat deck. They've got the Sandshrew and the Hitmonchan. The Hitmonchan going into the active spot. They've also got the Sandslash in hand as well. The Hydros this time using that Aquatic Ambience deck, and they have the Tentacle and the Finneon in hand that they can put down. They've got the Lumineons as well as that Golduck, but no Psyduck present at the moment. They opt in to go with the Finneon onto the active spot and the Tentacle on the bench. But here we are, game 2 of our Champions game A1. And the Rumbles have already pulled the Hitmonlee as well, which is fantastic because it can target the bench of the Hydros with that stretch kick, but they can't put an energy down right now, so they send it over to the Hydros, who have pulled their second Finneon, who they immediately put down onto the bench, but they do get an energy onto the active Finneon. That Water Gun can do 20 damage to chip away at the health of the Hitmonchan. Fortunately for the Rumbles as well, they have that X-Speed. They've just pulled the second X-Speed as well, so they've got both of those in hand. They look at their Sandslash, but they do get a first energy onto the Hitmonchan. It can come in with that jab, getting that easy 30 damage, halving the health of that active Finneon. comes back over to the Hydros, who get their first Pokeball, which they are going to set out immediately onto the board to get their second Tentacle. They still don't have a Tentacruel in hand, but they can get this Lumineon online, get in a second energy. However, with this Aqualina, it does 50 damage, but only to the benched Pokemon, so they need to think about whether or not they want to go for the Hitmonlee, but instead they're going for the Sandshrew. They don't want to have to contend with a Sandslash if it comes online as the Pokemon Flute being pulled for the Melemele Rumbles, and they can see how they want to play it out from here. They are immediately going to evolve this Sandshrew into the Sandslash, but that does not keep it safe from this Lumineon. They're thinking about how they want to approach this because they can't get this Lumineon off the board yet either. Now looking at where to place this energy, the best place. They're hovering over the Sandslash at the moment. They're really taking their time. They don't want to make any mistakes here. They know the importance of being the first ever champion in the PokeType League TCG. They get an energy onto the Sandslash. They play the X-Speed, so they're going to retreat this Hitmonchan, bringing its retreat cost to 0. They put the Sandslash into the active spot, so it is now safe from this active Lumineon. They can't go on the offensive though, because Sandslash does require 2 energy to get that slash that does 70 damage. And the Hydros, having pulled their second Golduck, are going to get a first energy onto the benched Tentacle. Now they've still got that second Tentacle in hand, and they can evolve that benched Finneon into the Lumineon that they also have in hand, but they're going to retreat the Lumineon. Now it does have a 0 retreat cost, so that is great for them. However, they decide to have another look at this Lumineon. They're really thinking about how they best approach this. And they are going to go for this Aqualina, and they choose the Hitmonchan. They don't go for the Hitmonlee, who is still at full strength, but the Hitmonchan is down to 10 health, and it's a Mankey being pulled for the Melemele Rumbles. It is the Mythical Island variant, as they get a second energy onto the Sandslash, and the Sandslash can get the first point here in Game 2, taking this active Lumineon off the board. And once again, the Melemele Rumbles are out to an early lead in this game, as the Hydros do move the Tentacle in onto that active spot, pulling their own Pokemon Flute as well, but they are going to put that second Tentacle onto the bench and get an energy onto that benched Finneon, who they are going to evolve into their second Lumineon in this game, the Gentle Slap on to the Sandslash, but Tentacle only has 60 health. The Rumbles can actually take out this Tentacle straight away, but first they're going to play the Pokeball they just pulled, getting their second Sandshrew in hand here. And as we said, the Rumbles are in full control once again, as they're thinking about where they want to put this energy, going with the Hitmonlee, finally getting an energy, but this Slash gets the second point for the Rumbles here in Game 2. They are in full control. They are looking to take this to a quick Game 3. They don't want to let the Hydros build any momentum. They know how powerful they can be. Again, the Hydra is the only team to defeat every deck that the Melemele Rumbles have this season, and the Aqualina for that Lumineon now online in the active spot targets the Mankey, taking it out in one go with only 50 health. They don't want to have to contend with any Primeapes coming online, as it comes back over to the Rumbles. They pull their second Hitmonchan. Looking at their hand, thinking about how they may want to approach this, they do put the Hitmonchan immediately onto the bench, getting the single energy required onto it as well. Now this active Sandslash, it won't be able to take the Lumineon off the board. It still has 10 health remaining. And there is the Tentacruel for the Hydros, immediately coming online as well. It gets its first energy. It does require 2 though to go for those poison tentacles. However, they're still going to retreat the Lumineon, but that is a questionable choice. They clearly have rushed that decision, wanting to keep the Lumineon safe, but it is not safe because the Rumbles have got the Hitmonlee. They retreat the Sandslash, the Hitmonlee into the active spot, and the Rumbles with this full combat deck are going to take Game 2, and they will be aiming to take a clean sweep in our A1 Champions game with the Rocky Boulders deck that we have only seen fallen one time this season, and that was in the major semi-final against the Pastoria Hydros. But going first in this game 3, it is the Hydros, and this time they are going to once again use that Aquatic Ambience deck. Now, it was their Frozen Pond deck that was able to take down the Rocky Boulders deck of the Rumbles. The Psyduck into the active spot for the Hydros with the Finneon on the bench. They have their 2 evolution forms in hand. It's the Mianfu that they think of putting into the active spot, but instead they go with the Geodude from the Genetic Apex set. They've got 2 Mienfoos in hand, but they put one of them on the bench, and they've got their 2 Gravelers, both Genetic Apex and Mythical Island, in hand, as the Hydros are going to pull their Giovanni. They play the Pokeball that they've got in hand to get another basic Pokemon. It is the Tentacle once again in hand for the Hydros. The Giovanni useless at the moment because they can't generate an energy, so they can't go on the offensive, so they send it over to the Rumbles, who pull their own Giovanni, who they can use because they can get an energy onto this Geodude, immediately going for the tackle, but they don't worry about the Giovanni for the time being. And the Hydros get their X speed as well. They can bring that retreat cost to 0 for the Psyduck. They can also evolve it, but this is the first energy onto it, and Psyduck does require 2 energy, so they're just going to go with the Giovanni onto the Psyduck, boosting the damage that it will do with this Headache by 10, so it's going to do 20 damage to the Geodude, but it will also prevent the Melemele Rumbles from being able to use a supporter card in this coming turn, which is fantastic because they don't want the additional damage from the Geodude, as the Rumbles have just pulled the Genetic Apex Golem. That is the variant that does get recoil damage. It is the Graveler online with the Lunge Out, only requiring 2 energy though. It still does enough to take this Psyduck off the board. And the Rumbles getting all the cards they need so far in this Champions game. They are doing fantastic. The Hydros struggling to get any momentum, move the Tentacle into the active spot. And none of their active Pokemon at the moment right now have an energy, but there's the Tentacle getting its first energy onto it. They can go for this Gentle Slap to do 20 more damage to the Graveler, who is still well and truly safe. Comes back over to the Rumbles, and now they've got the Golem from the Mythical Island set. So when it does damage, it only does 120 as opposed to the 150 of the Genetic Apex Golem, but it takes 30 less damage. However, it does require 4 energy, so they're not going to evolve this Graveler just yet. Going for the Lunge Out onto the Tentacle. The Hydros need to pull the Tentacruel, and they pulled the Finneon. That is not the card they needed. If they had pulled the Tentacruel, they would have been able to get this Graveler off the board. And now the Hydros are stuck with what they want to do. They do get the Finneon its first energy. They're going to play an X speed by the looks of things, potentially still hoping that they can get a Tentacruel shortly. They are going to retreat that Tentacle, bringing that Finneon into the active spot, and they've got that second Finneon that they're moving onto the bench as well. And it will be another 20 damage. They're clearly hoping that there is no Golem in hand for the Rumbles, but unfortunately for them, there is a Golem. There's also a Professor's Research now in hand, so they can get another 2 cards out of their deck. First they get the Leaf, they get the Onyx, they're not too worried about them. They do move the Onyx onto the bench, but they've got their choice of which Golem they want to use right now. And surely they are going to go with this Mythical Island version. 120 damage. It can take out any Pokemon in this Aquatic Ambience deck with a 1 guard press, and here it is taking out this Finneon, and it will take 30 less damage from attacks in the coming turn. The Rumbles are in control. They are looking to make history. This is terrible for the Hydros. This is not the performance they have had against the Rumbles before. They have been able to take them to the limit every time they have just pulled the Pokemon Flute, and it may be setting in for them right now. There's not much they can do. They haven't even placed down an energy. They're just going to go for the Gentle Slap because they know what is about to happen. Nothing gets done with that Gentle Slap to the Golem. The Rumbles don't need to put an energy out. They are about to become our A1 champions with this guard press onto the Tentacle, and Golem, who was an astounding member for the Rumbles all season, fittingly gets that final point for them this season to make them our A1 season champions. But with that, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you thought the best card was this season. And if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you in set A2.